Ajitu $21, 35 years ago, as she sat meditating, the picture of twin souls came to Patricia Judry in a vision. I saw it whole, in an instant, the splitting of the soul into its twin halves, masculine and feminine, the long evolution back together, the all-encompassing cosmic plan. She understood that because we were once one, we long for completion. When we reunite with our other half, radiant happiness is ours forever. Judry and her co-author, the psychoanalyst Maury Pressman, explain the nature of twin soulship in chapters that discuss degree the masculine and feminine principle sent preparing to meet the twin. Recognizing the twin, the sexual relationship between twins, group souls, and how to recognize them. Stories of legendary twins in history, the Curies, the Brownings, and Carl Sandburg and Lillian Steichen. The authors explain that twins can only recognize each other when both have evolved on a spiritual plane. Inner work, meditation, and self-exploration is necessary in preparation for the meeting. As a part of self-actualization, we each need to develop our opposite gender characteristics. The male needs to develop his feminine side, the female her masculine side. Throughout, the authors provide examples of contemporary men and women who have found their twins, tell how their lives have been transformed, and extol the union of body and soul in spiritual lovemaking. Here's a book that offers hope and solace to us all as we understand that one day each of us is destined to be reunited with our true spiritual partner. Kazimnininian damage noted fence Moore's date due December 29 49 sent February 8 49 96 GAOI 9 G8 March 1 6 1998 Bess April 19 1996 equals July 12 2000 I and G May 2nd 1 Bay May 9 2001 underscore Juno 8 1996 September 13 200 Juno 8 June 20th 1 Aufgedem Torpumding your true spiritual partner Patricia Judry and Maury D. Pressman, MD. Without addition, I saw that my years as I turn. Metal Meme. Introduction. On a night in July 1960, as I sat meditating, the twin soul picture came to me in a vision. I saw it whole, in an instant, the splitting of the soul into its twin halves, masculine and feminine, the long evolution back together, and the all-encompassing cosmic plan of group soul division and return. All of the details were there, indelibly impressed upon my mind. Some of it would later sink below the surface, to rise at various times when called upon. I had never heard of the twin soul idea before. Yet it came with the conviction that I was being given a task, to put it into writing. I saw that my years as a writer and spiritual seeker had served as preparation for this work. Eager to find what had already been written, I began my search through the spiritual literature. I could find nothing except an occasional brief reference, indicating that twin soulship was known in certain esoteric circles. Like pieces of a puzzle, each fitted neatly into the pattern I had been shown. None went beyond it. And nowhere did I find the whole of the plan set forth. Degree. I spoke to people about twin souls, relaying the substance of my vision. In some, there was an immediate response. The introduction, they would begin to smile and nod their head, murmuring, yes. Yes. I'm sure it's true, indicating a knowledge already present in the mind, but now rediscovered. For 30 years I lived intimately with the twin soul principle, meditating on it, studying it inwardly, seeking other sources. I made several attempts to write a book but could not seem to capture the subject satisfactorily on paper. There was something missing. The twin soul theme crept subtly into my other books. It had become a part of me from my deep conviction of its truth. In October 1989 I met Dr. Maury Pressman, psychoanalyst and man of the spirit. He, too, was interested in literature. We found that our spiritual paths had been running parallel. We were both particularly interested in the study of theosophy, the wisdom of the ancient masters. We became friends. I described for him my vision of long ago. His understanding of the male and female psyche brought the missing dimension to the twin soul concept. He was able to ground the theory, bringing it into the realm of life as it is lived. As we pursued the subject together, the book that had eluded me all those years finally took shape. What we have written here is hardly the last word on twin soulship, it is only a beginning. There is much more to be discovered about this beneficent law of love. As you read, you will have insights of your own. Trust them. They will be the voices of your intuition. Wyan Bernard Shaw St. Joan, the Inquisitor challenges Joan with, "Your voices are only in your imagination." She replies, "Of course. How else does God speak to us?" Patricia Judry. The supreme state of human love is the unity of one soul in two bodies. Sri Aurobindo. 2 The Japanese Yenicho Payit Rari Cs Irias, Pajvain Nahig Tritex 3 Sweet Ones. Japanese Yana o Alpedi. Coruscant. HH Theotet. Mu, Eos Thats. Prairie well wink the wis, ABAJPRDT Adiustve 5, id CLSNT Pow, Tindasis D. There was, Jern PG the Oahu Bone Coop Saber Tear City Esther Boots, I had bequine Piat, Ease Oeams Vathis Ukits Chat Rai 19 Ardib Mur E8 Persinakli A Penayir E, Ta, Me AI. Whatever our souls are made of, his and mine are the same. He is more myself than I am? 1 A.M. Heathcliff. This pure twin soul utterance was made by Kathy in Wuthering Heights, a classic love story written by a lonely spinster with no apparent experience of love. Emily Bronte's inspiration came from her soul. This same soul knowledge has inspired all the great love stories of literature and opera. Such works endure because their central truth touches the deeply buried truth in all of us. We are _incomplete and there exists somewhere a completing other too. Who will make us whole as we were whole in the beginning? The spiritual philosophies of the East, contained in the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu Vedas, and other writings of the ancient masters, teach us that the soul was created contained sent in both masculine and feminine in one, reflecting the dual nature of the Creator. The idea of the soul's division into two genders has come down to us through the ages in the words of philosophers, poets, and spiritual teachers. As a principle of nature, the 19th century philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer described it this way: polarity, or the sundering of a force into its equal and opposite halves, is a fundamental type of all the phenomena of nature, from the crystal and the magnet to man himself. The twin soul image was graphically portrayed by Plato 25 centuries ago, in a legend that has caught and held the imagination of the Western world. In the Symposium, Aristophanes speaks in praise of love, relating how Zeus struck the soul into two opposite halves, each to wander the earth in search of the other. And when one of them meets with his other half, the actual half of himself, the pair are lost in an amazement of love and friendship and intimacy, and one will not be out of the other's sight even for a moment. These are the people who pass their whole lives together, yet they could not explain what they desire of one another. For the intense yearning which each of them has towards the other does not appear to be the desire of lovers' intercourse, but of something else which the soul of either evidently desires and cannot tell, and of which she has only a dark and doubtful presentiment. If Hephaestus, son of Zeus, were to ask the pair, "Do you desire to be wholly one, always day and night to be in one another's company? For if this is what you desire, I am ready to melt you into one and let you grow together, so that being to you shall become one, and after your death in the world beyond you will still be one departed soul. Instead of two, I ask whether this is what you lovingly desire." And there is not a man or woman of them who, when they heard the proposal, would not acknowledge that this melting into one another, this becoming one instead of two, was the very expression of their ancient need. And the reason is that human nature was originally one and we were a whole, and the desire and pursuit of the whole is called love. Myth exists as a means of conveying truths too mysterious and complex for ordinary language. The Plato legend depicts a spiritual reality of deep significance to all men and women, one that holds the key to their fulfillment. The twin soul concept illumines the true nature of love and indeed perhaps the purpose of the soul on earth. The soul craves completion and return to its creative source. It is our belief that the way of return is first through the spiritual development of the individual, as far as is possible in the divided state, then the union of the soul with its missing half, its twin, and then a reuniting with the group souls from which it separated long before. The cosmic design, the picture of creation, is one of division and reunion. Let us follow the design for the birth of souls. In recurring cycles, Father, Mother, God pours itself forth into manifestation, later to return the perfected creation to itself. Through the interactions of its masculine and feminine principles, it begins the division of its one spirit into the many. In this first birth is established the pattern for the later divisions of the ovum sperm into the many cells of the human embryo. The cosmic law is above, so below is here demonstrated. In a continuous process of division, the divine energy descends into form. Throughout the universe, groups emerge, each group harboring a multitude of souls to be. These are the cells of the body of God, and each is a life in itself. The group souls separate into ever smaller units. As the groups separate, each of them is endowed with its own characteristics. The smaller the groups, the more closely the souls within them cohere. They memorize one another, even in the dim pre-birth state. The longer the association, the more indelible will be the memory. By this memory they will find their way back to one another in the time of ascent, locating their own group, returning in the order of their coming. Inherent in the separation is the reunion. The transcendent mind stands above, willing the completion of itself. The desire for return will infuse every atom of life through the long journey back to the unity of its beginning. Even in the throes of division, the newly forming lives will yearn for the oneness from which they came. With the birth of souls comes the birth of loneliness. This is the first consciousness of pain, and it will lead to the human realization that all pain is in separation, all joy is in union. But the separation does come to an end. As the groups divide into their smallest configurations, there emerges a host of single soul units. These are unformed souls. They are still only potential. Eons must pass before they evolve to who? Man state, yet they are whole in themselves, masculine and feminine together, containing all their unrealized potential. Seemingly alone in the universe, filled with longing for the soul families from which they have been cut adrift, these entities must suffer yet another loss. There is a last, fateful division, each is struck in two, their masculine and feminine forces gathering into equal halves. Yet each retains the seed of the other, creating the polarity that will bring about the ultimate reunion. This final severance completes the descent, whereafter the law of attraction begins the reassembling of the whole. The soul at last has a clear direction toward the lost half of the self. The divided soul must now evolve through all the lower forms of nature on its way to the human. Throughout the world of nature, and then through the human world, male and female seek each other ceaselessly. Evolution is spurred as we are drawn toward the goal of reunion and toward the summit of return. When sufficiently evolved as human beings, we will be ready for the twin meeting. At that stage we will come into contact with some of our group souls. The group souls, or soulmates, are encountered before and after the twin reunion. There is a general ingathering, as a response to the call from above. The group reunions, having begun on earth, continue after death in the world of spirit. Group will join with group in recognition and boundless joy. All across the universe they will be drawn together by the thread of memory. It is a memory of bliss, the source bliss, unconsciously perceived by unformed souls. The completed souls will return to the source in full consciousness as perfected beings, creators in their own right, expanding the consciousness of God. That is the purpose of all our struggle on the ascent. At the summit is perfected love, every created soul loving every other. The foundation is the love of men and women. Whenever people meet in love exchange, there is an ascension of their souls. When twin souls reunite, the ascendance is jet-propelled. The twins join the God force that draws all life upward. They are more than the sum of two, they are three. As Plato puts it in the Symposium, the original human nature was not like the present, but different. The sexes were not two as they are now, but originally three in number. There was man, woman, and the union of the two. From this came the name androgen. In reuniting after their long journey, the twin souls will become androgynous once more. Close as they will be when they find each other on this earth, their one soul will still be inhabiting two bodies. They will grow in oneness increasingly as they scale the heights of spiritual existence in the afterworld. Yet they will forever retain their individual natures within the unified soul. Always there will be communication between them, love exchange and creative interaction at levels of consciousness and bliss beyond our imagining. Certain spiritual writings confirm the eternal principle. The following comes from the sacred literature of Sufism, an ascetic and mystical Islamic movement that first appeared in Persia in the 8th century. Out of the original unity of being there is a fragmentation and dispersal of beings, the last stage being the splitting of one soul into two. And consequently love is the search by each half for the other half on earth or in heaven, a search that can become desperate. As twin souls are so alike to start with, it seems necessary for them to go their different ways before they can complete each other. Identity and complementarity are the two driving forces and axes of love. For the complete being there must be a blending of the two. This is to say that an individual must be strong in identity before being able to complement the twin. When the twins meet, their complementarities are not entirely fulfilled but open to further advance. The two have achieved sufficient security within themselves that they are not dependent on another for a sense of self. Then they are ready to recognize the other, to stand with the other, and to surmount the inevitable conflicts that arise in the course of human relationships. Twin souls have been described in another way by the late Bulgarian master Amram Mikhail Ivanhov, writing in the 1960s in Love and Sexuality, Part 1, every human being has a twin soul. When man leapt like a spark from the bosom of his creator he was two in one, and these two parts complemented each other perfectly, each was the other's twin. These two halves became separated, they took different directions, and they have evolved separately. If they come to recognize each other at any point during their evolution, it is because each carries the image of the other in the depth of his being, each has put his seal on the other. Thus, each one carries the image of this twin soul within. The image may be blurred, but it is there. 4. This reason, everyone who comes on earth has a vague hope that he will meet somewhere a soul who will be everything he needs, and that with this soul he will find indescribable harmony and perfect fusion. Twin souls complete each other, no other person in the world can so complete them. Thus, all beings you have met since the beginning of your multiple incarnations, all the husbands and wives you've had, all the lovers or mistresses, have all left you, because they were not for you. Perhaps you were together for a short while, like a pot with a lid that doesn't match. Whereas two souls whom God has created together are absolutely made one for the other, and nothing can separate them, they have no fear of being separated. In a married couple, when one or the other is afraid that someone may rob him of his partner, and nothing can keep this from happening, it is because that partner was not really the beloved, not the true beloved, the twin soul. A woman loves a man, he leaves her for another. A man loves a woman, she abandons him, but twin souls, on the contrary, recognize each other with absolute certainty and can never leave one another. When such glory awaits every one of us, we might wonder why the principle of twin soulship is so little known. We can only deduce that we have not been ready for it. Knowledge is given in the time of readiness. Perhaps the twin soul plan could not be made known on a broad scale until we were established in this new age of Aquarius. Humanity may have had to evolve to a point where it could make right use of this marvelous news. We believe that point has been reached and that great numbers of incarnated souls are able to love unconditionally and thereby find and rejoin their lost halves. Where then is our true beloved, our twin soul, and how shall we find each other? The twin may be very near, awaiting the last steps in growth, which both must take to be ready for reunion. Readiness is everything. The meeting can take place only after the point of arrival has been achieved within ourselves. Though we cannot predict it, the time is known by the universal forces that have been guiding us toward each other for eons past. Who could have known of the threads extending infinitely back in the lives of Johanna, a painter, and Philip, a book designer and illustrator? Johanna and Philip met informally at an art gallery one summer evening. They were strangers to each other and attending the function at the gallery with different motivations, she because it was the opening of her exhibition, he for reasons unknown to himself, he had merely followed an inner impulse. Johanna was uncomfortable in social situations, and though she was the focal point of the evening, she stayed in the background. At one point she found herself behind a group of people looking at one of her paintings. One man made a deprecatory remark. Suddenly another spoke up in fiery defense of the work, informing the critic that he had missed the essence of the picture. Johanna listened, spellbound, as he spoke of its soul dimensions. Though enormously excited and pleased, she also felt self-conscious and afraid of being noticed. As the viewers began moving away, she turned and left the room. Johanna took refuge in the coat room, berating herself as she had so often done for this need to separate herself. There she lingered a while, struggling with her impulse to take her coat and go home. A man entered, walking absently toward his jacket. He looked up. It was he, the man who had spoken on her behalf. Johanna stepped toward him. "Thank you," she said, "for defending my painting." She added, smiling, "I wanted to put my arms around you." There was a moment's pause, then she astonished herself. "I think I will." And she flung her arms about him. He returned her strong embrace for an instant before she broke away, laughing, unembarrassed, though she had never in her life opened her arms to a stranger. Normally it would have been all she could do to put out her hand. Philip introduced himself, and they began to talk there among the empty coats. Both were loners with few close friends and had a haunting sense of inadequacy on that account. Johanna had often suffered from a certain conversational claustrophobia. She felt pinned like a butterfly by the small talk with which people entertained one another. Her mind longed for reciprocal exchange, but this seldom happened. Unable to participate in exchanging social niceties, she withdrew into herself and her work. Though she longed for love, she withheld herself from love with her prickly persona and her blunt way of expressing herself. She had been hurt in her relationships with men and now carried her defensive shield as protection. Like the mythical princess, she could only be freed by love, yet love had not been able to find its way through. Philip handled social encounters by taking the stance of the vigilant observer. His directness in defending Johanna's painting had been uncharacteristic. Kind and sensitive to others, he rarely lashed out as Johanna did, though as their friendship grew he would come to value her bluntness. She on her part would admire his restraint. Philip's self-control had deep roots. Like Johanna, he was successful in his career and presented a strong front to the world. Inwardly he suffered from feelings of inferiority, which made him defer to others less gifted. His neurotic complex had placed a ceiling on his growth. He had tried to break through it, but his ceiling, like Johanna's shield, would not yield to force but only to loving recognition. Philip had struck the chord of recognition in perceiving the soul essence of Johanna's painting. The same echoing familiarity sounded in her with her sudden embrace and the opening of her heart in friendship. This was a soul contact, a recognition of the soul self in the other. The love that grew between them was not from a new seed but was a flowering of that which had always been. It unfolded as simply and quietly as a spring garden. Johanna recalled the comfort of their long first talk. I felt so at home with him. Being with him was easy as being with myself, yet better. Though both had stood apart from the social mix where conversation too often seemed empty and meaningless, they had both longed for authentic communication. Together at last, the floodgates opened. They talked endlessly, roaming the countryside, navigating busy streets, or sharing the quiet of the nights. Thoughts flew, their minds ignited new insights, they were carried along on the same creative joy that they both received from their work. The twin is the mirror likeness, the other side of self. Yet, so marvelous is the plan of God that when we find the twin we find a unique and fascinating individual. Part of the fascination no doubt lies in the fact that we are seeing an essential part of ourself reflected in new light. But also, the separate paths taken by the divided souls have brought different experiences to each, different but complementary. The other of our soul is ever new, ever interesting, bringing to us what we lack, have been wanting, and are ready to receive. We complete each other, not in an instant but through a new process of growth, becoming a closer part of each other, yet miraculously becoming more and more unique in ourselves. The paradox of twin soulship is that two become as one, and yet in so doing, increase their individuality. In twin soul unity we never become bored but are held in the fascination of perpetual growth. In twin soulship, close attention is paid to the being of the other. Abraham Maslow in his study of the love relations between spiritually aware people and toward a psychology of being describes this as becognition. In becognition, the experience or the object is fully attended to, having become for the moment the whole of being. Since the whole of being is being perceived, all those laws obtain which would hold if the whole of the cosmos could be encompassed at once. Concrete perceiving of the whole of the object implies also that it is seen with care. With the sustained attention, the repeated examination that is so necessary for perception of all aspects of the object. The caring minuteness with which a mother will gaze upon her infant again and again, or the lover at his beloved, of the connoisseur at his painting, will surely produce a more complete perception than the usual casual rubricizing which passes illegitimately for perception. We may expect richness of detail and a many-sided awareness of the object from this kind of absorbed, fascinated, fully attending cognition. The eye of the soul holds the vision of the perfected being, each twin, in gazing at its opposite, can glimpse that perfection and, through the power of love, help it to manifest. Something of this was at work with Philip and Johanna. Both had been blocked by a gender imbalance. Philip's overdeveloped feminine or yin sensitivity, turned inward to feelings of inadequacy, had restricted his basic masculine or yang self. Johanna with her forbidding manner had given negative expression to her yang force, inhibiting her true feminine nature. She had feared her feminine softness, but through the alchemy of the twin soul relationship she discovered that in her softness lay her strength. It was revealed not as weakness but as creative openness, receptivity, the very basis for profound and reciprocal love. Johanna was one who never cried, carrying old griefs and unshed tears buried deeply inside. Philip's acceptance of her was complete, his love unconditional. He encouraged her expressiveness, and in opening to Philip's influence she allowed herself to release long-buried tears. Gently he probed the painful areas of her past. Cry, he would say when he sensed grief rising in her. Taking her in his arms, he urged over and over, cry. Cry to your heart's content. She gained understanding of him as he too revealed himself in depth. And as the expressive, tender, and generous soul aspect of her yin was nourished, she became in turn the instrument of his liberation. Her understanding of Philip's true being allowed him to grow nearer to his proper stature. His inhibiting self-doubts began to fall away as his innate male powers were identified, appreciated, and repeatedly affirmed. Writes Maslow, repeated, fascinated experiencing of a face that we love or a painting that we admire makes us like it more, and permits us to see more and more of it in various senses. This he calls intra-object richness. We could speak of intra-person richness in each of this twin pair as they perceived the highest and finest in each other, and the fullness of their hearts gave expression to the perception. This served to aid their gender balancing and show us that the twin soul meeting may bring psychological help that has been needed and not found elsewhere. If the will for growth is strong, the two can be drawn together and through love and mutual assistance bring about the necessary changes. Even after the twin soul reunion, the inner work will continue. The twins' contributions to each other's growth will be their most rewarding acts of love. We see this mutual reinforcement in their exchange of letters. Philip writes to Johanna, "For the first time in my life I feel complete, and solidly content and happy with what I am. This is so largely because of what you have recognized within me and nourished in me. I'm so appreciative and grateful for your ever-present and unwavering love. How uplifted I feel to be so much beloved by such an elevated soul as you. The more I recognize in you, and I do, progressively, the more I become myself." This brings to mind the image that in our twinship we are like two trees that stand apart but close together. We have roots that dig deep in common soil and obtain nutrition from it, the common soil being our earthly experience, our immersion in society, and in our genetic background. Our trunks extend straight upward, side by side but separately, and our branches intertwine as we exchange with each other and nourish each other. Our leaves are extended upward into the stratosphere, to welcome the sun and its energies, receiving from it and spreading forth our own emanations, higher and higher as we ascend. Our growth is in terms of our mutual nourishment. Our trunks grow as we stand in close proximity and exercise our deep perception of each other, while our branches intertwine. In another letter to Johanna concerning the nature of true love, which is the love of the soul, Philip attempts to explain, "When we speak together, as you know, we have a deep communion. That is contact soul to soul. It's very different from gazing romantically into each other's eyes. It's a meeting in a more mysterious region, yet it's very real, very deep. It's much beyond language, it's communication that's almost telepathic, like the kind of thing I imagine is true in the upper realms where there is no language, but there is nevertheless the transmission of knowing. That is soul to soul, and it's an accompaniment of love. There are ways of love that go along with that. I know that I feel them in my heart and solar plexus." This describes very well the new region that is entered with the twin union. It is truly a meeting of souls in a dimension far beyond the physical. Soul love pours down through all the levels of being, illumining the mind, purifying the emotions, engaging the body in sacred sexuality. There is a new consciousness, a greater closeness to God, the origin of the love. In returning to each other, the twin souls aid the whole in returning to the source. They become keenly aware of responsibility, the responsibility inherent in all higher life to contribute to the upliftment of the rest. This is why we see so many twin souls joining their forces in works of service, conducting growth workshops, writing books, teaching in many ways. They are following their bliss and beckoning to others. Because they have touched new levels of inspiration, twins can perhaps be forgiven the excesses of language that often mark their communications to each other. This occurs most vividly among poets, as we will see in Chapter 8 in the Love Letters of Carl Sandburg. Their emotions are larger than human emotions, they are spiritual feelings and can't be expressed in ordinary words. It is not that twin souls take off into the ether. Their love is firmly grounded, but the depth of their bond enables them to reach so high. The realm of the soul is a magical realm to our everyday eyes, though perfectly natural to those who abide there, mystics, lovers, children, and angels. This may explain why the twin meetings so often have a magical touch in the sense of happenings beyond the ordinary. Johanna and Philip's meeting is an example. Such turns of fate could result from intensified activity by the higher forces that are continually guiding separated souls along the path to union. The great sweep of cosmic design, beginning with separations beyond number, reaches its first culmination in the repairing of the individual soul. All the forces of the universe reverberate to this climactic event. It is the moment of arrival, and of reward for the two individuals who have long worked toward it. Johanna and Philip had each striven for personal evolution, impelled by a soul knowledge of the need to realize their completion as individuals. Only when that was achieved were the matching halves drawn into each other's orbit to form the completed whole. It could almost be said that the twin appears on the scene when least needed, when each half-soul has reached its highest point of independence in the divided state. This is also the pinnacle of aloneness. Every man and every woman must climb the mountain alone, able to stand firm against the high winds that buffet the elevated soul. It is then, out of the mist, that the twin appears, not in response to emotional need but to fulfill the deepest need of the soul. By the marvelous design of the divine planner, the ultimate loneliness of the spirit gives way to the first great joining, and the end of loneliness forever. This is not like the fall into love. Falling in love generally means that one person becomes lost in the other, abdicating the self and entrusting it to the heart of the beloved. The twin soul reunion is a descent into the depths of the true self, the dwelling place of the soul. Following her first few conversations with Philip, Joe? Hannah mused in astonishment, "I'm on the edge of falling in love." That night she had a telling dream. "I am walking across a narrow footbridge, and it begins to soften all along one edge. I realize I'm going to fall. I look down and see that the fall will be far, and I'm afraid I'll be hurt." Then a voice says, "Don't fall. Jump." The bridge gives way, I jump and my body remains upright. I'm aware of angelic hands softly beneath me, breaking my fall and guiding me all the way down into what proves to be a great depth. I land lightly on my feet and find I'm holding a book. I open it and discover it is the story of my life. Fear of extinction, of self-loss, runs deep in human nature, accounting for the terror of death in those who see death as the end. Throughout life, conflict between oneself and others provides the polarity against which the soul struggles on its upward journey. The bridge in Johanna's dream is the bridge that connects twin souls wherever they may be. When the union with the twin is achieved, self and other become one, the bridge collapses. Nevertheless, even at this level the ancient fear of self-loss casts its shadow. Johanna, interpreting her dream, describes the jump off the bridge as a necessary leap of faith, entrusting herself wholly to the other and thereby coming into possession of herself. The book that she holds on landing tells of her life and its completion. The twin soul union reflects in miniature the ultimate union of all souls with the source. As below, so will it be above. The one is given at the level of our understanding as an indication of the other that is far beyond it. Helena Blavatsky, founder of the Theosophy movement, writes in The Secret Doctrine of Reabsorption as absolute existence, an unconditioned unity, or a state to describe which human language is absolutely and hopelessly inadequate. The human mind cannot, in its present state of development, reach this plane of thought. It totters here on the brink of incomprehensible absoluteness and eternity. Nor is individuality lost because absorbed. Once reached, the same self will re-emerge as a still higher being, on a far higher plane, to recommence its cycle of perfected activity on the day when the great law calls all things back into action. The concept may be beyond our grasp, but it is given us to taste the bliss of those higher states right here on earth. Who has not experienced it at moments? Certainly the peak moments of sexual union, that window into the world of spirit, are among them. From bliss we came, every human being springing from the passing bliss of another, and to bliss we will return. It is the reason for everything, it is the substance of everything. The Maharishi, at the start of his Western ministry, sat one evening cross-legged on a sofa, a tiny figure on an immense stage in an almost empty Albert Hall in London. Holding a flower in his hand, he waited peacefully until the few dozen people who had come to hear him fell silent. Then he laughed and said, "Life is bliss." Life is bliss for him because he is awakened. It will be so for all of us, since our purpose in being is to attain full consciousness and bliss. We awaken through love. Without love we would sleepwalk forever. We live in a universal network of love which is urging us awake at all times. An almighty act of love produced the division of souls and the design for their return to each other through increase of love. The joy of the twin reunion is great, but it pales before the raptures that will attend the reassembling of the group souls, each composed of united twins. Progressively the groups will be added to one another, expanding in dimension as the teeming clusters gather throughout the cosmos, multitudinous as the stars, each soul within them expanding in order to contain the bliss. Every action of our lives is a move toward love and union, some are more direct than others, that is all. God writes straight with crooked lines, the folk saying goes. As we evolve we learn to straighten out the lines. The straightening doesn't always happen on this planetary level. A young couple in their early 20s were married in 1940 and romantically in love. 10 years later love had turned into its opposite. 2 children were caught in the vortex. The divorce made headlines because of a vicious custody battle that brought out the worst in both parents. The judge separated the children, Solomon style, assigning one to each parent. And so 2 children grew up, each with an embittered parent who would scarcely allow the other parent's name to be mentioned in the home. 40 years later, the wife heard through her daughter that her ex-husband had died. Sometime afterward, he came to her in a dream. This was a lucid dream, the kind I have come to believe is a real spiritual experience. He was bending over me, and will never forget my astonishment at seeing again the handsome, dark-haired young man I had fallen in love with so long ago. I know that in the world of spirit we can choose to appear at any age we desire. The skin of his face was satin smooth. I wanted to stroke it to feel its silkiness. As I did so, I realized that it was the light substance of the spirit body. But his appearance was the least of it. The greater thing was that he was speaking to me with immense love and tenderness. There was forgiveness, and a plea for my forgiveness. We were back in the love that we used to feel. Realized it had not been extinguished. I awoke in that mood of love, knowing we had been truly reconciled. I wrote to both my daughters and told them of the harmony that now existed between their parents. It brought tears to my eyes to be able to say at last the words they must have ached to hear: love from mother and daddy. 24 It was clear to her that in the afterlife the soul of her husband had assumed its true nature. He had viewed her soul in perspective and been able to see their departure from love as necessary paths of learning for them both. Because she had cultivated her spiritual faculty, she was open and receptive to this psychic contact. This was not a twin soul marriage, yet the marriage was subject to the universal pattern of division and return in enrichment. Wherever love splits apart, it will increase and return. It can go nowhere without meeting itself. In whatever circumstance love divides, it will reunite. Following the law of all things. A family splits up over money. Others say, "What a shame." God smiles. He is taking them further afield, guiding their growth in the direction of love and reunion. It is the only direction, there is no other. They will be reconciled, if not on this earthly plane, then on the next. On the way, there is bound to be suffering. It will be outgrown. The masters affirm that we evolve through suffering until we learn to evolve through joy. The twin union is the security of evolution through joy. The crooked lines begin to straighten out. They straighten progressively until finally it is back to God as the crow flies. At the great return, the purpose of all the divisions will be seen, the evolution of souls from the first defined spark to the splendor of full being, adding themselves to Father, Mother God in all their individual glory. Twin souls, each return to the androgynous union, will forever retain the two unique identities, masculine and feminine, which they evolved in the dim past, two within the one, as the one remains one within the many. The masculine and the feminine. Masculine and feminine are the ever-creative, self-perpetuating energies of God manifesting throughout the universe. These are described in the Synthesis of Yoga, by Sri Aurobindo, one of the greatest of spiritual masters, who, with his partner Guru, the Mother, founded the now famous ashram at Pondicherry, India, in the 1920s. The masculine is the infinite Godhead who contains all things in a potentiality of existence. The feminine is his Shakti, the same Godhead put forth as a self-aware force that carries all within her and is charged to manifest it in universal time and space. She is the World Mother, creatrix of the universe, putting forth the gods and the worlds and all things and existences out of her spirit substance. She is the mediatrix between the Eternal One and the manifested many. By the play of the energies which she brings from the One, she manifests the multiple divine. As twin souls in the universe, evolving its endless appearance out of her revealing substance. By the reascending current of the same energies, she leads back all towards that from which they have issued, so that the soul in its evolutionary manifestation may more and more return towards the divinity. And so the pattern for the individual soul is set in motion. The deity divides and returns. All souls perfectly repeat the duality of God, the two in one, separated and returning. We can understand our masculine and feminine natures and the twinship of our souls by studying the twinship of the masculine and feminine within God. Each of us is a microcosm of the macrocosm. Once we understand the nature of the universe, we possess a master key by which we may unlock all the mysteries of our own souls. In Aurobindo speaks on the opposite aspects of the Creator, terms that apply perfectly to twin souls. They, the masculine and feminine of God, are the two poles of existence in one being. They represent two different sides of itself, obverse and reverse in relation to each other. The two lines or currents of their energy, negative and positive, affect the manifestation of all that is within it. Even in his activity he holds in himself all her force and energies ready for projection. Even in the drive of her action she carries with her all his observing and mandatory consciousness as the whole support and sense of her creative purpose. In just this way the male twin contains the energy of the female, while she is supported from within by his creative power. The twin souls were assigned their native gender at the moment of division, yet the two halves were never fully separate, for each retained the seed of the other. Evolution has seen the slow growth of that seed within each half of the soul, the growth always directed toward the time of reunion. That time comes when the dual energies in male and female achieve an exact balance as they are balanced in the divine. We are masculine and feminine beings at core, descendants of the eternal feminine and eternal masculine. We are sexual beings, our sexuality is built into the blueprint of creation. It cannot be denied. It leads to the love that is rooted in the soul. Twin soul love, therefore, is destined for everyone. It is for you, it is for me, it is for the rich and the poorest of the poor, for the prisoner in his cell, for the old and abandoned, for all who pine in loneliness. Every soul hungers for its completion, every life tends toward that. Though hidden in depths, the urge for completion is the motive from which all motives spring, it is the drive for return to that which was lost. First was the loss of our original home in God. Next was the loss of our oppositely sexed self. From the center of our severed soul, we hear the call to return, but we can only return in wholeness of being. We must reach laterally to the other of ourself, then we can turn upward to the greater completion. We live in a time of gender confusion, even gender denial. We must look more deeply to the source of our sexuality. Sexuality is soul deep. Through all our incarnations we have been developing our basic gender while nurturing the essence of the opposite in our male or female soul. We have assumed myriad forms in our lives on earth, passing through the lower kingdoms to the human, the masculine soul seeking its perfection in a succession of male bodies, and the feminine in a succession of female bodies. Our evolution has been single-focused in purpose, to return us to ourselves at an advanced stage of completion. Unswervingly we have followed the distant aim of becoming woman, becoming man, becoming whole. It is often said that we alternate our sexual forms in our successive incarnations because the soul needs the experience of both sexes. But this does not take into account the twin soul principle, by which the female half of the soul evolves the yin and the other the yang, each harboring the essence of the other, never changing gender. During our successive lives we have been evolving our basic gender self as well as the contra-gender within. Through the experience of each sex, the male consciousness enters the female soul, and every development of the feminine nature is absorbed by the masculine counterpart. They learn of each other by becoming built into each other, as once they were. It is for growth into consciousness and experience in material form that they are parted and then rejoined. They have no need to alternate their sexes in earthly life. As they evolve into self-definition, she could say, I, woman, know what it is to be a man, without need of the body parts, know it as my own inner masculine takes on strength and fortitude, creative initiative and leadership. He could say, I, man, have knowledge of womanliness, as my woman. Linus expands my heart from within, inspires my higher mind and stirs my most compassionate and tender feelings toward the young and the needful all about me. When at last they find each other, they are able to re-establish their oneness because they have become one in developed soul substance. The part of the male that has grown to completion in the female soul is a part of her being, as is the extension of herself residing in him. This explains why Kathy, in Wuthering Heights, can say in truth, I am Heathcliff. She is he and he is she. Yet she is a whole woman, and he is a whole man. What is it, then, to be a woman? What is it to be a man? The answer is to be found in our understanding of the two divine energies interacting within the human soul. Man is not one thing and woman another, but yang energy is one thing and yin another. They combine differently with different proportions in the soul of man than in the soul of woman. In Eastern philosophy, yang and yin are defined as follows. Yang is the initiating impulse, which divides and delineates. Yin is the responsive impulse, which nurtures and reunites. Without yang nothing would come into being, without yin all that comes into being would die. Yang is mental activity in its forceful aspect, yin the imaginative and poetic exalting the merely mental to the beautiful. Yang goes ahead with things, yin contains things within herself. Yang does, yin is. Yang in masculine givingness bestows the gifts, yin in feminine being receives, preserves, enhances, and redistributes them. Yang constructs, yin instructs, yang implements, yin complements, yang is strength, yin endurance, yang is knowledge, yin the mystery that reveals itself and becomes knowledge. Yang is the discoverer, yin lures toward greater discovery. Yang is the self-developer, inspired by yin, the self-dedicator, for her development and his dedication. Yang is the lover, and therefore beloved, yin is the beloved and the source of love. Yang is will and yin is wisdom, and one without the other is neither, and together they are joy. Yang is as the day, turning into night, and yin the night preceding the day. The one is the force that drives the waves of the ocean forward, the other the force that draws them back so that they may go forward again. To be a woman or a man, therefore, is to stand on the ground of our gendered self with our complementary opposite gender in proper balance. This opposite gender we call the contra-gender, meaning the feminine component within the man and the masculine in the woman. Man is yang-based with yin rising. Woman is yin-based with yang rising. The balances and proportions are the measure of their spiritual maturity and gender strength. The twin union can occur only between a man complete and secure in his manhood and a woman confirmed in her womanhood. A truly strong woman is strong and happy in her femininity, and comfortable in her secondary masculine character. A fully masculine man exhibits all the best of his yang qualities along with yin sensitivities in high degree. This is the condition for what Maslow calls self-actualization. When a self-actualized man and self-actualized woman meet and bond, their gender characteristics are shared, flowing in harmonious exchange. Male and female energies do not become homogeneous. Separate and distinct, they can be recognized at work within us, and, recognizing them, we can employ them creatively, bringing them into balance and hastening our progress toward the completing union. That balance will be different for every soul. It is achieved partly by nature's efforts and partly by our own. We are in creative partnership with the God force in our work of reassembling and reuniting. You are a woman. Somewhere there is a man working to bring your womanly powers to fruition within him. When you meet, you will recognize yourself. You carry in yourself, like a forming child, the very qualities of maleness that define his essence. You are a man. Your complementary opposite is growing in the direction of your maleness, developing in herself the unique character of your yang strengths. They will reflect back to you in the delight of recognition when at last you encounter each other. The exquisite harmony that will exist between you will result from that understanding between the two parts of you that are the same. You have never ceased to live and grow, one within the other. Sri Aurobindo writes of the feminine and masculine duality of God. This duality, though separate in aspect, is inseparable. Wherever there is one, there is the other. Physicists have recently discovered, and were astounded to note, that if a twirl in one electron of a two-electron atom is reversed by external force, the electron twirl of the other is similarly reversed, despite the vastness of the distance between. This parallels the nature of the twin soul duality. The twins are separate in aspect, that is, they occupy two different forms, but wherever there is one, the influence of the other exists in the spiritual dimension. Every action in the course of their evolution affects the soul of the other by a natural law, which has become manifest on the material level. The development of yin in yang and yang in yin is evident in the sweep of history, as we trace our growth from primitive man and woman to the evolved partners of today ready to join in twinship. Early man was all yang, but for the germ of the feminine deep within. Early female was all yin, submissive and dependent. From them we derived the cliché women are passive, men are aggressive. Woman can be wholly passive still, when the shadow influence has her in its grip. But in its developed state, passivity, that which takes in, gestates, nurtures, brings to birth, becomes receptivity. Receptive passivity provides a clear channel for the intuition, the direct line to God and creativity itself. It is the yin energy of the eternal feminine, and it is not for woman to treasure alone but to share with man. Similarly, the aggressiveness of early man, or man in the shadow, transmutes to creative initiative as he grows into his full stature and is revealed in light. The creative power of the eternal masculine in woman is employed in her unique way, giving energy and strength to her creations, then flowing back to him refined and beautified. This gender balancing is the condition of true equality, the kind that need not be fought for. It is built into the soul, needing only to come to recognition and maturity. Such distinctions are necessary before the sexes can understand each other. It is the negative force in the psyche that binds us to stereotypical thinking that breeds hostility where there should be love. Ultimately, the yin and yang polarities will exert their magnetic force and bridge the gap between every pair of twins. Mutual recognition, now a rarity, will become common. Such a recognition story between psychologist Ken Wilber and Treya Killam is told in his book Grace and Grit. Both were spiritual seekers. Ken was an author of many books on spirituality and consciousness. We quote from an entry in Treya's journal on the night they met in 1983. At one point we all went into the kitchen for some tea. Ken put his arm around me. I felt a little uncomfortable since I hardly knew him, but slowly I put my arm around him. Then something moved me to put my other arm around him too, and I closed my eyes. I felt something indescribable then. A warmth, a kind of merging, a sense of fitting together, of blending, of being completely one. I let myself float with it for a moment, then opened my eyes, surprised. What had just happened? Some kind of recognition, a recognition beyond this present world. It had nothing to do with how many words we'd shared. It was spooky, eerie, a once-in-a-lifetime feeling. When I finally left at 4 a.m., Ken held me before I got in my car. He said he was surprised, he felt like he never wanted to let me go. That was just how I felt, like I belonged in some almost esoteric sense in his arms. Ken describes drifting into sleep that night, only to awaken with a start. I found her. That's all I kept think. I found her. Then in the morning he describes the following: as I lay in bed, I noticed a series of subtle energy currents running through my body, which felt very much like the so-called Kundalini energy, which, in Eastern religions, is said to be the energy of spiritual awakening, an energy that lies dormant, asleep, until aroused by an appropriate person or event. Incredibly, the same thing was happening to Treya, and at exactly the same time. And from Treya's journal, fascinating, lying in bed this morning. Feeling little wavelets of vibration, very clear and distinct. Sensations in my arms and legs, but mostly localized in the lower half of my trunk. What is happening when this goes on? Are things loosening up, held tensions from the past dissolving? I focused on my heart, felt an opening very, very clearly. From thinking of that sensation I had with Ken last night. An amazing powerful surge from my heart that then goes down into the center of my body, and then up toward the top of my head. So pleasurable and blissful it's almost painful, like an ache, a longing, a reaching out, a wanting, a desire, an openness, a vulnerability. Like how I would feel perhaps all the time if I weren't protected, if one dropped my defenses. And yet it feels wonderful. I love the feeling, it feels alive and very real, full of energy and warmth. Jolts my inner core alive. This energy that Treya describes is the magnetic energy constantly playing upon us beyond our consciousness. It is the incipient bliss of the cosmos and is activated by soul union, twin souls, group souls, the meditator's union with God. Masculine and feminine found their ideal balance in Ken Wilber and Treya. Treya wrote, within 2 weeks of our first meeting we decided to get married. It was fast. But somehow we both seemed to know, almost right away. The strength of their twin soul union would fortify them through the years of heartbreak that lay ahead. Their marriage was one of enormous trial and reward, as they battled for 5 years with the cancer that finally claimed Treya at age 41. The language of twinship appears throughout their communications, as with Ken's flowers to Treya on the eve of her mastectomy and his note, to the other half of my soul. And he provides us with a fine description of their gender harmony. They are in Germany, seeking yet another treatment for the rapidly metastasizing cancer. Ken climbs a hill on the city limits to reach a high fortress, where he has these thou ghs. From the top of this tower I could see for perhaps 100 miles in all directions. I looked up, heaven, I looked down, earth. And that's what started me thinking of Treya. In the past few years she had returned to her roots in the earth, to her love of nature, to the body, to her femininity, to her grounded openness and trust and caring. While I had remained where I wanted to be, where I myself am at home, in heaven, which, in mythology, does not mean the world of spirit but the Apollonian world of ideas, of logic, of concepts and symbols. Heaven is of the mind, earth is of the body. I took feelings and related them to ideas, Treya took ideas and related them to feelings. I moved from the particular to the universal, Treya moved from the universal to the concrete. I loved thinking, she loved making. I loved culture, she loved nature. I shut the window so I could hear Bach, she turned off Bach so she could hear the birds. In traditions, spirit is found neither in heaven nor in earth, but in the heart. The heart has always been seen as the union point of heaven and earth. Neither heaven nor earth alone could capture spirit, only the balance of the two found in the heart could lead to the secret door beyond death and mortality and pain. And that is what Treya had done for me, that is what we had done for each other, pointed the way to the heart. When we were first together, we were sometimes irritated by our differences. But we soon came to see that that was the entire point, that we were different, and that, far from being whole and self-contained people, we were each half people, one of heaven, one of earth, and that was exactly as we should be. Together, joined in the heart, we were whole, we could find that primal unity which neither alone could manage. Gender harmony between two people occurs after individuals have labored to bring their own interior forces into balance. This is illustrated in the following story about Diane. Diane had despaired of ever finding a man with whom she could have a fully loving relationship. She was in her late 30s, extremely attractive and dynamic, with a colorful personality. She had devoted many years to establishing and running her own firm in the media field, and she now ranked among those at the top. She termed herself a feminist, and most of her close friendships were with women. In her kitchen she had a bulletin board with a collection of cartoons disparaging the male sex. Though a source of amusement, the bulletin board was also an indication of her confused feelings. Diane had been involved in a 7-year love affair with Anthony, a Frenchman. Their relationship was fraught with conflicts, but these were submerged in the waters of the ocean that separated them. The vast distance that lay between them stirred their longings. The letters that flew back and forth were filled with passionate declarations of love. However, their differences rose quickly on the occasions when they visited each other. Diane discovered that whenever she stayed at Anthony's apartment in the small village where he lived, a remarkable change came over her. She would suddenly be overtaken by a fit of domesticity, cooking, cleaning, beating rugs on the balcony rail alongside other housewives. Part of her wondered what on earth she was doing, yet she could not deny that she was enjoying herself. In truth, she was expressing her most basic nest-building instinct, her yin nature. This feminine base had been neglected in her years of competing in the professional world. Her yang forces had been in the forefront and created an imbalance of the complementary feminine energies within her. Her feminine nature was literally starving. In Anthony's apartment the pendulum swung the other way, and yin was claiming its own. But when the swings are very wide, they always create a new imbalance. Her days of domestic bliss among Anthony's pots and pans always ended in disappointment, for Anthony, too, was out of kilter on his gender scales. He was ahead in his feminine growth and behind in his masculine. Diane's burgeoning feminine demanded a strong masculine partner to complement and complete it. The yin and yang forces work differently in the man and in the woman. In realized womanhood, yin energy is demonstrated as active receptive, creative in the highest sense, the pure receptor for the spiritual and flow. In the less developed woman it is displayed as neediness and a clinging to the male. In the undeveloped male, yin tends toward passivity and weakness, while in the fully matured male it expresses itself as tenderness, empathy, and nurturing. These qualities shine with true luminosity in the man with evolved masculine power. These qualities are what Diane sought and could not find in Anthony. His passivity and lack of masculine responsiveness roused her anger and finally her contempt. The unraveling of the relationship was long and painful, leaving both of them bewildered, despairing, and full of blame. Diane employed her active yang strength to seek recovery and healing. A devout Catholic, she embarked on an intense spiritual search. Aided by her long habit of prayer, she courageously investigated her own psyche. Central to Diane's awakened perception was the sense of her feminine nature, her love nature, which for so long had been stifled, then contorted in its struggle to come into alignment with her masculine side. Diane saw that she and Anthony had initially been attracted to each other because of their strong polarities. Diane's masculine self was in the forefront of her personality, and Anthony was dominated by his feminine self. These are the opposites that attract, then repel, for they are not the complements. True identity for Diane would only come when the forces of her feminine gender assumed supremacy over her contra-gender. The same would hold for Anthony. Diane had been hurt in love many times before and realized that she had been suppressing her feminine nature out of fear of being vulnerable and the hurt it can bring. In order to clear psychological blocks from her past, she sought counseling. In her loves, she found, there were echoes of her ambivalent love relationship with her father. Through the help of counseling, meditation, and introspection, Diane perceived this and gained the courage to expose herself, step by step, to new ways of relating. The anti-male cartoons were thrown away. Her business had always been an expression both of her talent and also her flight from her femininity and spiritual longings. She reduced the intensity of her involvement in it. She reordered her priorities, downscaling her material needs to enable her to spend hours each day on her yoga practice. She branched into service to the sick and stressed. Through intensive reading and prayer, she rediscovered her relationship with Christ. As time passed, her soul became more nearly balanced. She recounts, "In my busyness, I had ignored my real thirst for the spiritual in relating to God and to others. As soon as I had made the decision that God was my priority, my life turned around. I found myself in Paris at a conference to promote awareness between the Eastern European countries, Russia and the West. The Archbishop of the Russian Orthodox Church was a keynote speaker. There was no logical business reason for attending, but my heart wanted to go. I met a man there who had also come from the other side of the world, and for the same reason. Sam was a business entrepreneur, arts promoter. We had a lot in common. He had a wonderful mind and a full understanding of human dilemmas. His clarity of thought and his expansive heart were a rare combination. Sam lived in a city not too far away from me. We kept in touch by phone and letters, and I found myself opening to him more and more, becoming intimate. I was ecstatic one day when we shared our favorite prayers by fax. We shared our thoughts on God, on emotions and feelings, and all the time I felt held in a light net of love. We visited each other frequently. I had never been so close to anyone. I felt safe in the knowledge that we were there unconditionally for each other on our spiritual journey. It was a time of great happiness. My life had taken on a soft golden glow of love and possibility, of hope, and of the miraculous. Once again Diane had become involved with a man at a distance while seeking emotional intimacy. Though Sam was much stronger in his masculine being than Anthony had been, and Diane more secure in her feminine, she was to find that a gender imbalance remained. There were fears and uncertainties in Sam that came to the fore as the relationship intensified. His feminine was still in a stage of dependency. He and Diane were unequal despite their compatibilities and strong soul connection. Diane had fallen deeply in love, having dared at last to surrender and make herself vulnerable, risking the long anticipated hurt. Interpreting Sam's resistance as complete rejection, she fell into despair. Heartbreak consumed her. She had been so certain that theirs was a deep and abiding love, the true love of the soul. She had felt the soul love spreading its radiance through all her being in her newfound connection with her spiritual source. After the storm of suffering had abated, she discovered that she had not been entirely wrong. Sam remained steadfast in friendship, reaffirming his genuine feelings for her. Their love had changed course but still ran deep. Though not twin souls, they were close group souls, commonly referred to as soulmates. In his unwavering devotion and support, Sam confirmed the strength that Diane had first seen in him. She felt certain that they would be lifelong friends, consciously bonded at soul level and contributing to each other's spiritual growth. Diane didn't doubt that her long-troubled love affair with Anthony had been a preparation for the greater learning that would come to her through Sam. And her relationship with Sam had been necessary for her to realize that she needed to do more inner work in mind, body, and spirit. It was not until several years had passed that she met Mark at a dinner arranged for singles interested in spirituality. She immediately felt a connection with him. It was not his outward appearance that drew her but his sensitivity and open interest in discussing spiritual subjects with her. When they went out for the first time, they found they both were rereading Does God Exist? By Hans King, the spiritual classic published more than 10 years ago. Along with the soul response, the similarities of their experiences point toward twinship. They had both run their own communications companies and had recently shifted to careers of service. They had both undergone therapy to clear up past psychological problems and blocks, to make them more aware and conscious of themselves. They therefore had the words to express their emotions and what they were feeling. They had both been celibate for 2 years, preparing their bodies for the fulfilling and tantric sexual relationship they both desired. They both had a daily spiritual practice of prayer and meditation, and both were involved in some community work. Their ethics and sense of the moral were compatible, as were their priorities toward their families and friends and their work. They were both involved in some physical activity, she in yoga and he in running marathons. They were both vegetarians. They both had the same religious upbringing and background. So Diane and Mark's mind, body, and spirit were in a profound embrace. This was not a romantic love that happened suddenly, it was a slow unfolding of two souls who had searched their lives for the other and finally found completion. To be supported entirely for herself was a new feeling for Diane. When they came together physically, it was to satisfy a thirst for a union much larger and deeper than a sexual one. Lovemaking for them was as natural an act as speaking, sleeping, and being. Their sharing increased, and each now exclaims that they have finally found all that they wanted in another, and more. The bliss and joy of their encounters, sexual as well as in the everyday, are imbued with wonder and respect. They both acknowledge that it is God who has guided them to each other, and it is God to whom they offer their future lives. Married now, they are stronger, clearer, happier, and more peaceful beyond anything they've ever known. They recognize that the path toward the twin is often a painful and difficult one, as it was for them. Though each had many disappointments, their faith was their guiding light. In their personal growth to a deeper understanding of the self, their difficult experiences had not hardened them but had opened them to the possibilities of a healed heart. We approach the twin through our learning and our experiences of love. The lessons may be learned in love partnerships or through simply developing love capabilities in ourselves. Our general relatedness to others is the broad canvas of our labors. Like a painter, we work all over its height and breadth. When we remain open, all experience is used by the soul for self-discovery and identity, pointing us in the direction of authentic selfhood and thus toward union. The psychiatrist's office is a place in which the work of self-discovery and gender balance is carried on intensely, often reaching dramatic heights. Co-author Maury Pressman cites the following case of a young man being treated for depression. My patient Roger was about to give up on everything. For too long he had been afraid of asserting himself. Instead he was overly accommodating, dependent on the approval of everyone with whom he worked. All this niceness became a straitjacket, reinforcing his feminine self, which preferred to be loved and taken care of, at the expense of his assertiveness and his innate leadership qualities. He had long felt overshadowed by his father, and evidence kept accumulating that he was inwardly enraged. Finally I ventured an interpretation, suggesting that he might be holding on to all of this fear and helplessness and hopelessness in order to subdue his rage, which in fact was the other side of his strength. I handed him a pillow and suggested that he beat it to allow the rage to surface. After some protest he finally started to strike the pillow and began to feel some anger. I encouraged him further, and he felt more anger. I told him to bite the pillow and he began to bite it and shake it like an animal. Surrendering to the full power of his rage, he began to roar, his face contorting to that of a demon. He confronted me with it, his eyes closed. His rage went on for some time. When it subsided, he curled into a fetal position and began to suck his thumb. This young man illustrated the release from gender inhibition to gender development, and then to gender balance. The release of his demonic energy, which arose from the same source as his assertive strength, was also the release of his masculinity. He told me that in the course of his exercise with the pillow he had even felt sexual stirrings. One day he came in looking crestfallen. He had just chaired a staff meeting during which his associates had severely criticized some of his professional plans. It seemed to me he had reverted to the old pattern, trying to lead them by gaining love instead of asserting his authentic self and his position. I asked, "Have you forgotten your power? Have you become afraid of your demonic energy?" He returned and confronted his associates, presenting again his original plan. Though it was not adopted, he sensed a new respect among them. At about the same time he began to see a young woman for whom he experienced love and a strong sexual drive. Sexual relations followed. He told me just how much pleasure he felt when he was able to embrace her and express his protective strength. As Roger released his aggressive energy in a sublimated healthy way, his masculine self grew stronger. He came more and more into his own, becoming more spontaneous and more physically relaxed. A gender balance was established that had not been in evidence before. This development did not entail any loss of his yin sensitivity, or of his affection for the people who were important in his life. It may be thought that gender is an inborn thing only, that it is fixed, genetic, unchangeable. But Roger teaches us something more. Our gender may be inborn, but it must be developed and nourished by our own efforts. In order to develop his basic gender identity, Roger had to be willing to challenge deep-seated fears. The aggressive energy thus released was used to cultivate himself. His was a refined use of aggressive energy, which when sublimated becomes assertion. This has nothing to do with the shadow side of the self, which would otherwise express itself as cruelty or self-seeking power. And so, beneath everything, the defining and balancing of gender forces goes on. It is the work of the soul and the means of restoring the divided soul to itself. Why can't a woman be more like a man? Professor Higgins mourns in My Fair Lady. That is what a woman is doing in the pursuit of her completion. Her masculine force asserts itself, sometimes taking the lead, as it seeks its true balance within her. She becomes more like a man, then consolidates her new powers and becomes the woman she is. Masculine identity has been following the same process. This is the goal toward which the conflict of the sexes has been moving. The long gender struggle, we believe, has been preparing the way for the union of twin souls on a broad scale. Harmony and equality are not yet one. The outcome is certain, however, as certain as the dual love nature of God. As our eyes and our souls open to this fact, we move closer to the joy on the other side of the struggle. Ken Wilber communicates this joy, writing of his and Treya's marriage. Our favorite activity was still very simple, sitting on the sofa, our arms around each other, feeling the dancing energies in our bodies. So often we were taken beyond ourselves to that place where death is a stranger and love alone shines, where souls unite for all eternity and a single embrace lights up the spheres. The simplest way to discover that God most definitely is embodied, love of the twarmed form. But their simple happiness was short-lived, for they inherited, in Ken's words, 4 months of happiness and 5 years of hell. They were to touch the depths of darkness, even turning in fury on each other as they rose and sank beneath the weight of the challenge they had been given. Yet Treya died in bliss, in a manner that evokes the deaths of saints, certain in the knowledge of their oneness with each other and with the universe. One intuits, reading their illuminating story, that they had accepted their burden of pain and suffering for reasons beyond their own soul advancement. It was their gift of service. Treya's writings on cancer and illness reached an estimated 1 million people around the world. She co-founded the cancer support community in San Francisco and personally counseled hundreds of cancer patients. In the memorable story of their love, grace and grit, they do not shrink from taking us into the blackest depths of their human weakness, making all the more exalting the triumph of the bittersweet finale. I put Treya in bed that evening and sat down next to her. She had become almost ecstatic. "I'm going, I can't believe it, I'm going, I'm so happy, I'm so happy, I'm so happy." Like a mantra of final release, she kept repeating, "I'm so happy." "You promise you'll find me?" she asked. "I promise. Forever and forever. Forever and forever. Then I can go." "I can't believe it. I'm so happy. This has been much harder than I ever thought. It's been so hard. Honey, it's been so hard, but now I can go. I'm so happy. I love you so much. I'm so happy." During the last 2 weeks, Treya had been almost obsessively going over what I had said to her on the way to our wedding ceremony, 5 years earlier. I had whispered in her ear, "Where have you been? I've been searching for you for lifetimes."